Is Travis Kelce going to be a bust going forward? How do you handle the Eagles in early 2024 FFPC drafts? And is one AFC North running back getting set for a huge bounce back campaign next season? Plus, the 2023 FFPC main event $1 million grand prize winner, Teague Orgeman, is going to drop by to talk about how he built his seven-figure juggernaut, how he spent Week 17 watching the games, how he's going to spend all that cash, and much more. We've got a great show for you tonight. Dave Terpoilli is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics. Welcome into the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com, myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is normally the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. He is preoccupied on assignment tonight, so I bring in my good friend and longtime FFPC champion, Mr. Dave Terpoilli, at Dave Terp on the X. Dave, Happy New Year, man. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight.
What's going on? It's good to be back. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, and this is good practice for you, warming up for all those draft coverage shows we'll be doing coming up in the early and middle and, quite frankly, late part all summer long. This will be
100%.
It's good to talk to you. How did your season end up in 2023?
The season, it was a profitable one. A very small profit, but a profitable one. We had a lot of good bullets that were right there. We had the number one overall team in the best ball tournament, in the regular season, just flamed out week one. Just got outran by Christian McCaffrey, and a couple other guys. It was a tough finish. A couple main event teams that were right there, but just didn't put down the right combinations when it mattered at the end. So profitable, but could have been a lot better.
I think that's what's always so maddening. It was shaping up to be a really good season for me as well. And like you said, it was profitable, but it could have been a lot better. I had so many teams that just didn't perform the way they were performing during the regular season. And that's fantasy. That's what happens. You can't control everything. I'd much rather
look at some of your teams and you're just like, I wish the sprint started now. Like that team that was number one was number one pretty much all season. And as we got closer, Tank Dell got injured, to CJ Stroud, Dalton Schultz, all the guys that were getting you there, it started just Travis Etienne came back to earth a little bit. So it was definitely a bummer, especially, going into that with so much promise and then just kind of flaming out at the end.
And the great thing about it is we're going to have the Never Too Early FFPC Best Ball Tournament launching here probably in the next 2 weeks or maybe in the next week. It never stops. So if 2023 let you down, 2024 is almost here. We got the FFPC Playoff Challenge, everything going on right now. And speaking of that Playoff Challenge, here's what I want to tell you at the top of the show about several challenges going on with the FFPC. Go to myffpc.com right now to play in the weekly challenge. No draft or salary cap. Get in by Saturday's kickoff. Remember, we got a kickoff tomorrow. And then Sunday's kickoff. 2 separate challenges, the Saturday or the Sunday. You can get in for $35 or $200. There's no draft, no salary cap. You're just picking your players and watching those points pile up. It is the exact same format as the FFPC Playoff Challenges, which are also open for business. No draft or salary cap in there. You're picking the 12 players that you want on your team, 12 players from 12 of the 14 teams that will make the postseason, 1 player per team, and you can win up to $500,000 with the $200 entry fee. And of course, if you want to play for $35, you're still eligible for a $100,000 entry fee as well. Win those this season by going to myffpc.com and registering today. Remember to comment on it, share it with your friends and enemies, and get notified every time we go live. Coming up on tonight's show, Dave and I are going to list the reasons examples of why you need to handle Keenan Allen a certain way in drafts coming up, what to do with Kyron Williams this coming season, and much more. Plus, as I said at the top, the 2023 FFPC main event $1 million grand prize winner Teague Orgeman is going to go hard on how the sleepers he drafted hit. The problem with having 3 stud tight ends, I guess it wasn't a problem for him because he turned it into $1 million, and much more. If you want to connect with us on X at HSFF is where to do so. I'm at Eric Balkman. Dave is at Dave Terp. Facebook.com/HSFF is where to contact us there. highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any emails for us, we'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. Okay, let's lead it off. Terp, you did the HSFF show with me on the Better Sports Network a month or so ago. I'm going to lead it off with John Terry right now talking on YouTube. Are we going to be talking about Tony Pollard tonight? Because the
name will not be mentioned tonight. Okay. It's very painful. There's going to be no Tony Pollard talk. I mean, it's just been a disastrous year for Tony Pollard owners, including myself being leading the charge. I did say he could possibly be the running back 1 this year. Everything was there. It just hasn't worked out. I don't know what happened. I mean, he just doesn't look like the guy that we saw last year. Coaching staff seems like they're just more throw dominant with CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, Ferguson, Cooks, and Dak having a great season. Dallas buzzing on offense, and it really has nothing to do with Tony Pollard. Not catching passes, useless in the passing game. They're not giving him goal line carries. Like, it is just a complete disaster, and it was just an absolute miss by me and a ton of other people. Not many people were not on Tony Pollard this year.
Well, let's pose the question for 2024. Pollard said a couple of weeks ago that he didn't realize how serious his injury was till recently, till towards the end of the season, where he's just now starting to feel like he's all the way back.
Doesn't look like it?
Well, here's the thing, Terp. He is not going to be going at that 1-2 turn next year. He's not going to be
anywhere close to that.
Right. So doesn't that make him a potential buy in redraft leagues next year?
It definitely has potential at value, but we also don't know will he be back in Dallas. And if he doesn't go back in Dallas, he can go into running back purgatory and go literally anywhere. And that can mess up everything. I don't think Dallas is going to pay him any sort of money after what they saw. He might come back there on a cheaper deal and with a competition type of situation with another rookie or veteran type of guy, especially if Dallas does well in the playoffs. But I don't. Right now, I'm off him. I mean, I know the injury was definitely something that, that took its toll on him this year, but just the lack of just any sort of passing game role, which everybody thought was going to be, Christian McCaffrey-like, and it has not been Derrick Henry-like.
No. And I think, we'll see what happens, obviously, once ADP starts setting itself here in the next couple of weeks to find out where Pollard's going to go. But if you're drafting in January, you are going to be drafting a little bit blind because he could be a Cowboy next year, as Terp points out, or he might not be a Cowboy in 2024. Let's talk about another running back that just had an absolute crazy town banana pants finish to the 2023 season, and that was Breece Hall. Week 17 alone, 13 carries for 84 yards, 9 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. In the 2 starts that Trevor Siemian made down the stretch, Breece Hall had 21 catches. Against the Browns, Breece Hall had 13 of the Jets' 15 running back carries, and in the first half alone had a couple of really good tackle-breaking runs. Question here, Terp, for you is this. This is now going to be coming into 2024. He is going to be 1 year recovered from that torn ACL, a full year recovered from that ACL. You had a situation down the stretch where he not only was the alpha, but he's collecting, receptions like
everything.
Like he was catching everything, right? And so now I understand that it's Aaron Rodgers next year and not Trevor Siemian. Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to pound the ball downfield a lot more consistently than Siemian ever did. That said, while he might not get the checkdowns that he did with Siemian, the offense should be by and large better. Terp, we talked a lot about how if Hall doesn't tear his ACL, he could have been the 101 pick in fantasy drafts in 2023. Now, coming into 2024, everything's pointing in the right direction for him. Slam dunk first round pick, but where does he go in the first round?
He easily is going to get consideration for a top 5 pick. I mean, to me, he's right behind Christian McCaffrey. There's really no questions about it. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty at the running back position, as you saw with guys like Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler kind of flame out, Tony Pollard, we mentioned, guys that were getting taken, end of the first, early second in most drafts that kind of just didn't get the job done. So you look at a guy like Breece Hall, who was a league winner, all these $1 million winners and big winners in all these contests. Most of them had Breece Hall. Check downs. He just looked great at the end of the season. Trevor Siemian or not, Aaron Rodgers or not. I mean, he's a slam dunk, top 5-7 pick next year to me. And I'll take him in the top 7, almost every draft I get an opportunity.
You think he'll be the second running back off the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially with Aaron Rodgers. I think people are going to he's not Trevor Siemian. Like you said, he's not going to dump it down all the time, but that means he can get the ball down the field. And that's just going to give more room. That's going to open up Garrett Wilson. That's going to open up maybe Devontae Adams, guys like that. My guess is the Jets, they see what they have on offense this year. And if they have the opportunity to get a guy like Adams and add another receiver on the outside, that's only going to help Breece Hall.
Yeah.
And if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I mean, the Jets, as good as that defense is, as good as Breece Hall is, as good as Garrett Wilson is, the offensive line continues to improve, if they add depth there and get Aaron Rodgers back 100%, the Jets could easily be, if you look at what the AFC is right now, they could be a favorite going into the next season.
I think a rising tide raises all boats. I think that's how the saying goes. And certainly that rising tide of Aaron Rodgers could be that thing that raises not only Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and everybody on that offense going forward. An offense that might be going in the opposite direction, but certainly not trending upward at this point in the season, is the Kansas City Chiefs. In the last game for the Chiefs, Travis Kelce had 4 targets. He catches 3 of them for just 16 yards. This was in week 17 against the Bengals. That makes 3 straight games where Travis Kelce gets fewer than 50 receiving yards. Now, if you compare Travis Kelce to mere mortals at tight end, he's having a great season. 16 yards away from 1,000 yards, which would be the 7th year in a row. But Travis Kelce is not a mere mortal, and he should not be considered, or we should not be comparing him to other tight ends at the position, because Kelce is a unicorn. He's one of the best to ever do it. My question here is, Terp, we had people taking him at the 101 last year. He was a de facto top 5 pick in every single FFPC or Fantasy Pros draft, right? Now we have the rise of Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Luke Musgrave to a certain extent, Trey McBride, Tucker Kraft, Michael Mayer, all these young guys, right? And this is still incorporating guys like, Mark Andrews, and I know Hawkinson's dealing with the injury.
Darren Waller, guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, like George Kittle, these second-tier guys. So here's the thing. Kelce is not going to be a top 5 pick next year, but I wonder, like how big is the drop-off going to be? Because it seems like he's lost a step. And this could be, he never just gets back to what he was doing before. Now in drafts next year, Kelce's kind of a conundrum. You want to take him in the first round, but is he still worth that first-round pick? I'm not sure. How are you seeing it?
I don't see there being any tight ends as of right now being drafted in the first round next year. I just don't see a world. I mean, you're going to have consensus differ on every player. You see Travis Kelce, he's the third option on that offense right now. He just looks slower. He's dropping a lot of passes. He's dropped a couple touchdowns. You have the whole Taylor Swift thing hanging around. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rice and Pacheco are the best options on that offense right now. The rest of the offense, they stink. But Kelce just doesn't they're not really creating many opportunities for him like they have in the past. You would see Travis Kelce, no matter what the situation was, getting 6, 7, 8+ targets a game. Unless they were in blowout situations, and he's just not getting them right now. And if he is, they're 3-yard passes, 5-yard passes. They're just not in the game flow that you usually, even like goal line stuff. You see like the creativity, shovel passes and things like that. You're just not seeing them. And it definitely has me worried. I mean, I was really off Travis Kelce this year. But next year, I don't see much. I mean, he's going to get drafted too high in a tight end premium league like the FFPC. Like you guys you mentioned, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, 2 guys that I'll take over Travis Kelce next year. I mean, when it all comes down to it, I just feel like they're in better roles in their offense. And you see the downfield ability that both of them possess. And does Travis Kelce still have it anymore? Maybe if they add somebody on the outside that helps Rice, maybe it could change. But right now, I don't see that.
I don't see it either. And Kelce, to me, on the surface, looks like a good buy next year. And not a good buy.
It all depends on where.
That's my point. Is like
Yeah.
if he still ends up going in like end of the first round, early second
If he's
round,
a second round pick, I'm just not there. If he slips into the third, you could make justifications for it based off your your construction and stuff, like especially early on, because he's not going anywhere. And early on, taking chances could just leave you a dead team real quick. But getting a guy like Travis Kelce, especially if things improve on what this year was, and this year, let's call it what it is. He's had 2-3 maybe games. Mm-hmm. Everything else has been very, very mediocre for his standards for being a first round pick. I mean, it just hasn't worked out. I had him on one of my main event teams that was in the dance, low owned Travis Kelce. I'm thinking, hey, this could work out. It didn't work out. He never got there. He just absolutely flamed out, and it was definitely a bummer.
It was a bummer, and I think that's the best way to say it. We have the opposite of a bummer coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Teague Orgeman, the 2023 FFPC main event $1 million winner, is coming up. Before we get to him, Terp, I have to ask you about your Eagles, specifically Jalen Hurts. 18-23 for 167 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does throw a pick in the Eagles' loss to the Cardinals last week. 8 carries for 25 yards as well. Devontae Smith, we already know, is out this week for Week 18. We know that Nick Sirianni and A.J. Brown don't seem to be getting along there right now. I'm kind of curious, as we go into 2024 drafts, how are you looking at the Eagles? Do you still view them as this juggernaut that many people thought that they were coming into the season? Team started off with an undefeated record deep into October, and now you're having a case where they've lost, 4 out of their last 5 games?
They're a disaster.
It doesn't look good right now, and yet we're going to be drafting these guys in a couple of weeks. What are you looking at from the Eagles? Who are the buys? Who are the sells?
Jalen Hurts is still obviously a buy. I mean, tush push is just unstoppable. I don't think they're going to get rid of it. If they do, it's definitely something to monitor. A.J. Brown's still going to be a first-round pick. No questions there. The question comes into the Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. They're the guys that have some questions because Devonta Smith hasn't been great lately. He's dropped a lot of passes. Dallas Goedert was injured, getting back in the offense, but he's not. He's a third, fourth option maybe on the offense. Where he's getting drafted in FFPC drafts, it's a tough buy because his ceiling is only so high. The guy that I'm really curious about is what do they do with DeAndre Swift? Yeah. I love DeAndre Swift. He's a guy that I think has potential to be a first-round pick if they use him right, pay him, and give him the touches that he deserves. He's the most explosive person on that offense, including all the guys on the outside, in my opinion. He has the burst. He can't pass block. That's a big issue. But the Eagles don't pass the ball that awful much, and they're not throwing the ball down the field that awful much. So I just don't understand why he's not getting more carries. I mean, but he's definitely a guy because he's on a short contract and he's not guaranteed anything next year. And we know what the Eagles do at the running back position; they don't value it. So it's definitely a lot of questions. But you definitely get some, if you can get DeAndre Swift at like a mid to 5th, 6th, 7th round type of situation, it'll be worth it because you're taking a good gamble on a really good offense that hopefully will have a new offensive coordinator. Hopefully Hurts will be 100% because he's not playing like it. Mm-hmm. But that offense and especially that defense is just painful. I've had sleepless nights not getting a home playoff game. That's all I look forward to in January. Home playoff games, getting down there, getting torqued up. And it's not looking like it's going to happen. And Dave's a very sad person.
Well, maybe not in the first round, right?
It would take – so here's what we'll do. We'll say it right now. If the Eagles – play the Packers in Philly, me and you, we're going to the financial. Yeah, we're going to sit there. I'll promise nobody will beat you up or anything like that. You won't get anything thrown at you. You can wear whatever the heck you want. I'll protect you. But that's probably the only shot we got because unless Dallas just has a Dallas meltdown, which is always possible, but it's a sad time in Philadelphia right now.
I will say I'm going to the game on Sunday afternoon for the Packers and the Bears, and it's one of my local radio show here in Wisconsin. One of our sponsors actually has some club seats, so I'll be going to the game, but I'll be inside, so I won't get the full frozen tundra experience. I've done it once. I did it once with Drew Maselli, Dave.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
Yeah. So we all went, Dave Gerzak, Drew Maselli, one of Drew's buddies, and we went to a Packers-Niners game at Lambeau Field, and we also got club seats that game because Drew refused to sit outside because it was freezing out. And it's a different experience because you can't really hear the crowd.
Yeah, the vibes are different.
The vibes are different. And
the drunks are different. Everything's different. You're stuck inside. It's cool. It's great. win, lose, or draw,
Right.
obviously your emotions are going to be there, but it's just not the same when you're out there with the animals. I mean, it's just no matter the fans of whatever team you are, you got to sit outside. I don't care how cold it is. Drink more.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. My plan is to party with the animals after the game if it's a win, which I don't know if it will be. I'm hopeful. Packers will beat the Bears.
Bears are playing better.
They are playing better. They look like a different team, especially think about when we were all out in Las Vegas watching week 1. I mean, the Packers absolutely shellacked the Bears, but the Bears are a different team from what they were back in early September. The last thing I want to get to here, Terp, before we get into our FFPC main event $1 million winner, Najee Harris, week 17, 27 carries, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns in the win over the Seattle Seahawks. It was his best rushing game of the season. The last 2 games now, over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns to Harris's name. Is this enough for you to get back on board with him in 2024? Or are you still swinging the door, slamming it shut on Najee Harris for fantasy value next season?
I mean, if at the right price, but Jalen Warren's not going anywhere. We don't know who's going to be a quarterback. I mean, there's just so many questions with that team right now. Maybe it's Mason Rudolph, because if the Steelers would have went Mason Rudolph a couple games before, who knows where they'd be right now? They wouldn't even be fighting for a playoff spot. They'd already be in. They'd be in a Browns type of situation because he's playing great football. I mean, Pickens, Johnson, they're getting their ball. And the running game is just beating teams up. So, I mean, am I backing on Najee Harris? No, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I'll probably have some shares early on because, the offense is going to – they want to run the football, but not a ton. I don't see it.
I'm definitely higher on him this year than I was last year. However, I think a lot of other people will be too, and it might just price him out.
He's gonna get to a point where I'm curious to see how these early drafts go, how these guys get priced up, or where you have an idea of where you want a guy to go, but he could be 2-3 rounds off for all you know. I mean, and you're gonna have somebody who just likes Najee Harris, goes out there week 18, whatever it is, and has another big game. He's gonna get priced up there. People will be like, "Oh, he's the guy next year." And he's probably going to go to a point where you just don't want to draft him.
Right. I totally agree. Well, who better to talk about 2024 drafts than the guy who did it better than anybody else in 2023? He's a 2-time FFPC main event league champion, but quite frankly, that kind of pales in comparison to what he achieved this year. After a slow start, his Hodeg's Green Squad won his main event league and ultimately crushed the championship round en route to first place and a $1 million payday. Please welcome in the newest FFPC millionaire, Mr. Teague Orgeman. Teague, happy New Year to you. And my goodness, what a happy New Year it is for you. Welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a great end to 23 and a weird start to 24. So it's been pretty wild last 5 days, but appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And I do want to get into this right away because I don't know if you know this, you may or may not know this. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin, a couple of Jordan Love Hail Marys southwest of Green Bay. And so I see your team name and I see Hodeg's and I'm like, oh, Hodeg, the mythical creature from the northern part of Wisconsin, right? I don't think about this because I'm in Wisconsin. Then I'm like, wait a minute, this is a national thing. Does Teague have some sort of connection to Wisconsin? And then I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, you are from the home of the Hodeg, Rhinelander, Wisconsin, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm a Rhinelander High School graduate, 1999. Hodeg's Green. I had 2 teams in the main event. I had Hodeg's Green and Hodeg's White. And I think it was my first year doing 2 teams, so I needed some kind of naming convention for them. And I remembered when I was a kid, they used to have the traveling basketball teams, and they wouldn't tell you the A team or the B team. Just all the good kids happened to be on one team, so they call them Hodeg's Green and Hodeg's White. So that's kind of how I wanted to treat those 2 teams. Like, I'm not going to play favorites. Obviously, now I have a favorite. It's Hodeg's Green, but I thought it was a good karmic way to kick off the football season.
Well, listen, Terp he's going to ask you about what you did for week 17 to take in the action. Before we get into that, I have to ask, so this happened Sunday night. There was no Monday Night Football. This is now 5 days later. Has it sunk in for you yet? I mean, what has it been like this week? Has the press been alerted where you're living right now? Are people all over you, friends and family? Has it sunk in that man, I just won $1 million playing fantasy football this year.
It hasn't sunk in. It still feels really, really surreal. But I have gotten a lot of friends and family reaching out, and that's honestly been the coolest part about the whole thing. Is I didn't realize how many people were aware of what I was doing and were pulling for it. And I've just gotten some really nice text messages, and a lot of people when I tell them, I'm not super public about it, but I've told a couple of people, they've fallen to the ground laughing. So that's been kind of fun. It's been a good week, just connecting with people who I've been playing fantasy football for 27 years. So to see people from my home league, right? People that I've played with online before, it's been a pretty cool week.
Did people know, like, leading up to this? Did your friends and family know what you were in for?
They did. I think partially because of the holiday season. So I was in near Rhinelander actually for the holidays, and so when I'm more animated than usual, people start to ask questions about like what's going on. So this sounds strange, but like I think I'm live to win this. Like it started. I kind of felt that way even going into week 15, which is weird because I was in 308th or something. Mm-hmm. But I've been playing really well in the lead up, and people were kind of generally aware. And then when it got into the Sunday night game, my wife and I had an event we were supposed to go to with just a couple of friends and family. And so when I got there, I had to tell them, like, I'm not a crazy person, but you need to understand, like,
I'm going to be watching the game. Don't bother me.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever you had planned for dinner, like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be glued to this game.
What, who was the catalyst? Because obviously you said you're just outside the top 300 in week 15. What was the catalyst? Like, who really sprung you forward into contention?
Kyron coming back was big toward the end of the season. Trey McBride off the waiver wire kind of stabilized a lot of things that I was trying to do. And then Jaden Reed was, because my receiver room was, I started Jefferson, Hurts, T. So the entire season, I'm just trying to put it together at receiver. I didn't have a receiver in the top 25. I'm not sure there's been a main event winner without a receiver in the top 25 for this season. And so I'm trying to play. I had some Kirk, that was great. Kirk went down, but it was really Reed, McBride, Kyron, I think. And then Brees, obviously, 2 out of the 3 finals weeks.
All right. So you said, now this was like a dinner function that you were supposed to go to with your wife. So did you end up just like staying at home, or did you go to it and then just isolate?
Well, I was at my in-laws and watching the games during the day, and they were leaving me alone, which was great. I appreciate that from them. But we had this thing planned, and so we had to leave actually for it right before the afternoon games were over. So I'm driving the car half an hour, and I'm just talking to my wife. I'm like, I need down and distance constantly on this Bengals Chiefs game. I need down and distance on Broncos Chargers. And I figured if I was 40 down with Jefferson and Reed, I had a decent shot to win, and ended up being, I think, 31 going to the final. So we got there then, and it was a small gathering. There were 5 other people there, but just walked in and said, none of you know anything about fantasy football. I'm going to give you a real quick primer in the half an hour we have before the game starts. And this is what we're all doing. And we're just going to watch this and just go crazy. It was great.
All right. So John Terry, a guy who has had a ton of success playing in the FFPC over the years, he wants to know, and I'm not going to repeat it, but I will say he wants to know, when the Vikings decided to start Jaron Hall, what was sort of your reaction to that, knowing that Nick Mullins had these 2 really big games throwing the ball the previous 2?
Great question. So earlier in the week, I thought Addison was going to be out, and I had Jefferson. So I'm thinking, all right, wheels up. I've got 15 targets coming for Jefferson in this game with Mullins. And then they announced Hall, and I tricked myself into thinking it would be okay. And then watched the first series. I'm like, this is trouble. Like, and I said some pretty unkind things about Jaron Hall as a football player during the first half. And so,
justifiable.
Yeah.
Justifiable indeed.
Exactly. He seems like a nice kid. But just, I couldn't believe that they were, it was, to me, it was pretty clear after the first series. I feel like a lot of people felt that way because they're playing for a playoff spot. And then when they announced at half that they were going to go, I needed, I think, 1.5 points or so at half. when they announced at half they were going to go Mullins, I breathed a sigh of relief, not even knowing that Reed was out with the chest injury because, and then the first play, literally the first play that they had, I think of the second half, they hit Jefferson and put me over the top. But the pass that really the wounded duck toward the end of the first half, that was like are we really doing this kind of moment? But fortunately Mullins came in and saved the day.
So in that game, that pack. So I want to set the record straight here. So you were born in Wisconsin, but you don't live in Wisconsin anymore, right?
I don't. No, I'm in the Bay Area now, but I get back, whenever I can.
Okay. So was this like? I mean, are you a Packers fan, or do you not have fandom as far as teams go?
I'm a fourth generation Packers fan. My great grandfather owned a bar in Clintonville, Wisconsin, and my grandfather would
home of the Truckers.
Yeah, would chart the Packers games on the radio on butcher paper for him and run it down to the bar.
Awesome.
When my grandfather returned from the Korean War to work at the Kimberly-Clark paper mill in Neenah, he got season tickets. We've had season tickets in the family for 70 years. Like we organize holidays and birthdays around Packers games. Like we are real hardcore about the Packers fandom.
Okay, so this had to be, so obviously your family's on board with the Packers. Yep. You were rooting for Jaden Reed. He catches the 33-yard touchdown in the first quarter from Love. And then I'm just a fan, like watching the game. And I'm like, maybe they'll squeeze out a Carlson field goal here before half after that turnover. And then boom, a 25-yard pass from Love to Reed, where Reed, quite frankly, did most of the heavy lifting. He gets all the way to the end zone. What was that feeling like when you saw him plunge in with 8 seconds to go?
That was incredible. I mean, that was pandemonium in the room, and it was like slow motion. I saw the Red Sea parting because they had, not to get too football nerdy, but like they had trips right. They cleared out 2 guys going downfield. They ran it for Reed. He ran maybe the best route I've ever seen. I mean, I'm biased, obviously now.
Obviously,
he goes across and then he just dusts the linebacker. It was kind of a full circle kind of thing because I drafted him thinking. So back in the draft, I was one of those guys who was pounding the table for JSN for the Packers because I thought let's get a cup right in this LaFleur offense, and it turned out he wanted a Debo, and that play was just like full Debo, right? Just carrying the defender into the end zone was fantastic. So that was, that's the one that stands out obviously from the game is like that close to sealed it. And it was incredible.
And then at that point you were down by like what, a point and a half,
1.5
points?
Yep.
Okay.
1.6, I think. Yeah.
All right. So then at that point you you're feeling pretty good about it, but you didn't really do any celebration at all until Jefferson caught that pass early in the first half. Like, at what point did you realize, okay, this is happening, it's real? When was that? And then what did you do?
It wasn't even on the pass that Jefferson caught, which put me over the top because I've lost games like any long-term player has. I've lost stat correction games on Wednesdays, right? And I think that put him up maybe like less than a point. It was he made a catch later in the drive. And after that, then it was like, all right, I'm 2 or 3 clear. This has happened. And then we got to celebrate all over again.
And what did you do for that? I mean, did you have some champagne on ice already? What was that scene like?
I finally ate some food because I couldn't really, the sweat is so stressful, right? You're just I don't want to drink. I just water, please, until that happens. So I think my body finally released enough to be able to eat.
Did you get lightheaded at all?
No, it was just I did have that thing that people talk about where you see your whole fantasy career, right? Like the flashbulb kind of thing, like just all the time, all the really this being like a bucket list thing for the last 12, 15 years. And I had just a nice moment with everybody. It was really it was just great being around people who were pulling for me.
That's awesome. Teague Orgeman, the champion of the FFPC main event, joining us tonight. Terp, let's ask. Go ahead and ask Teague about this Mostert business in Week 17 because I think this is pretty compelling stuff too.
So Mostert obviously was one of your best players all season, a great draft pick. When he was declared out, who was the guy that you inserted in for him?
I was going to bench him. he wasn't. I had
regardless, even if he was active, he was still going to be on your bench.
Yes, yeah. I had my thought process was I was in, I think, 7th heading into the last week, and there was that Detroit-Dallas game obviously on Saturday, and I thought I needed Ferguson in case that game shot out. So, and I felt pretty, McCarthy called, I think, 2 lengthy down the seam, like first reads for Ferguson. I felt pretty good about it early. He ends up with 9 or 10. So didn't feel great about it afterwards. But Mostert was, I was going to play Kittle. I felt like I needed Kittle because all the other teams up there had McCaffrey. So he wasn't, even if he was healthy, he wasn't going to be in.
Wow. And that's, I mean,
that's stunning.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? But like, just to think about a guy who had gotten you as far as, a 21 touchdown season, and now you're in the real money here in week 17. It takes a certain amount of chutzpah. You were ready to do it anyway, and obviously the decision was made for you when he was inactive. But Mostert, what he did during the season, Teague, was unbelievable. You got him in the 9th round of this draft. You mentioned Jake Ferguson, 12th round pick for you here. Jaden Reed, we've been talking a lot about. He was a 13th round pick. Kyron Williams, a player that blew everybody away this year. No. He was a 14th round pick. So many of these mid to late round picks for you hit this year, and you needed all of them to get all the way up for a 7-point victory in this championship round. After you had drafted this team, obviously you didn't know the impact that all these players are going to have. But how did you feel when you looked up and down? I think this was an online draft you drafted in early September. How did you feel about it after you put it together?
I felt really good about it afterwards. I built it to be good at the end of the season. So, I took JSN, I took Reed for kind of end of the season plays. Brees was, the theory on Brees, right? Was he going to be eased back in? And then toward the end of the year, he would pop. And it all sort of worked out. I didn't, was not planning on Jefferson and T missing as much time as they did, obviously. But even Ferguson was, to me, was more of a late season play as he got more acclimated, being a first year starter. So I built it with that in mind. But then I put up 88 points in week 1, and then I started 1-3. So I was thinking maybe that wasn't a great idea. What I've done here, but it was just everything. Which is what you have to have happen, right? To run that hot, but everything hit. Like it was, and it was intentional building it that way so that I feel like that was a construction that gave me just the best chance in the sprint.
Were you, a lot of those players I just mentioned here with Mostert and Ferguson and Williams and Reed and all those guys, were you particularly proud of any of those picks? In other words, like, we all take chances when we get to the latter part of drafts, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And the ones that they work out, I don't know if we have a real genius behind it. Sometimes it's just like, I got the right player and he ran pure for me. Were you particularly proud of any of those picks? In other words, did you feel really strongly about any of those players prior to the season starting?
I felt really strongly about Kyron, but only because I've been tricked so many times by cam makers. And I was pretty convinced that McVay hated Akers, and just he's so good at he's the master of we're gonna ride Cam, and I think had Williams not gotten hurt early last year, I think it would have been Williams last year too, the entire way.
Oh, interesting.
And I felt like he was, I feel like that was an inefficiency. And so, was sweating him coming around. I was actually kicking myself for not taking him around earlier, but felt really strongly about him.
Before Terp asks you about your tight ends, John Terry wants to know if you're going to be drafting live in Las Vegas in 2024. Have you given any thought to that?
I think I might have to. I haven't before, and I'm sure that's going to make me worse. But
well, I'll tell you this, Teague, there's going to be a ton of people who want to meet you for sure.
1,000%.
Yeah, totally.
I want to meet all of them. Like I'm a fan of all of their. I've been watching them play for years, and just really, and have learned just a ton from a lot of those guys. So I think I might have to do it this year.
2-part question. Number 1, you said you started off 1-3. What seed were you going in the FFPC playoffs?
I was I'd won my league. So I rattled off 10 wins in a row then after going 1-3. So I was the 1 seed in my league, won the league playoffs. I think I was 308. heading in. But I honestly thought I was live because I like after week 4 or so, I was probably playing at like a top 70, top 80 type clip. I just felt like I can't totally explain it. Just like felt really good about it. Felt like it was a pretty solid group.
Second question. Championship week, you started with 3 tight ends, McBride, Kittle, Ferguson. How hard was it to get them all in your lineup throughout the season and decide which one to go with?
And to follow up on that, when did you get, because I know you didn't draft McBride, how early did you pick him up off waivers?
I think it was week 7 or 8. I think
it
was it was maybe right before the Ertz injury or right after. It wasn't actually that hard to get them all in, and I didn't play them all consistently because my receiver room was so bad. So it ended up kind of working out where, like when Kyron got hurt, okay, great, I'm going 3 tight ends. When Jefferson's hurt, I'm going to go 3 tight ends. And I've played that way in the past, and I like the floor that second flex tight end gives you if they can give you some volume. So I'm comfortable playing that way. But it wasn't like I was trying to jam him in every week. It just ended up working out that way that I played a little JSN, I played Charbonnet one week, but I'm pretty comfortable playing them both in the flex.
When you a lot of times when we have, whether it's a main event champ or Fantasy Pros champion, a lot of times in the sprint, the lineup sort of sets itself for them. And it's a little bit easier. It's less stressful because if you don't have a deep team, if you have a very top heavy team, it makes lineup setting easier. Did you find yourself throughout the season really, rubbing your brow, trying to figure out what am I going to do this week? Who do I have to bench? Or, because of bye weeks and injuries, did you feel pretty good about the decisions you were making every week?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, I felt like my hand got forced a little bit with T and Jefferson, but in the sprint, I didn't play perfectly in the sprint, right? I had a Justin Jefferson, Matt Gay miss in week 16 that cost me 11 points, which, I was feeling pretty intensely late in the first half of the Green Bay Vikings game and thinking like, did a Matt Gay swap really cost me $1 million here? And I didn't, and I considered for a moment during week 17, there was a team starts with pulling main event, I think, that had a Browning T team. And I thought, had I swapped to T, Reed to T, it would have basically been like a 1-to-1 Jefferson versus Browning, like head to head. Right? It was kind of, it didn't end up working out that way. There were, I think, a Rice team and one more team passed him, but I considered it. Like I thought about it, and fortunately didn't make the move. But it was during the season, I didn't feel like I had a lot of really tough decisions. I feel like the sprint was much more, all right, everybody's healthy. Like this is, now we have to actually, my hand's not being forced as much. I actually have to manage this a little more actively.
Teague, let's get to a couple of emails here from some of the listeners. Steve in San Mateo, California. Hey, Teague, are the Vikings looking at a new running back and quarterback next year? That's Steve in San Mateo, California. Certainly it's early, but what we saw at quarterback wasn't great in week 17. Kirk Cousins is coming off a serious injury. I don't know what's going to happen with his contract. And obviously, with Dalvin Cook being released and the Vikings not doing a ton at the position, I mean, they pretty much trusted Madison. I know they have Chandler. They made the trade for Akers. Your thoughts on what the Vikings backfield is going to look like in 2024?
I think definitely a new quarterback. I mean, and I think they, in hindsight, like giving Hall a preview last week was probably like the audition, like where are you with this? And I think after that, they can't go in with Mullins, Dobbs, Hall, and I don't think they are inclined to wait for Kirk. So I think it. It feels like they think they're pretty close though. Like it'd be pretty tough for them to press the reset button entirely after, winning, 13 games last year. They were kind of in the mix even without Kirk this year. So my guess is that they go for a veteran somewhere. Maybe Russell, if he's available, somebody like that. I think that they're not ready to totally blow it up. But I would expect new quarterback.
This is important because a lot of people are going to be drafting Jefferson super high. Addison's going to go higher in next year's draft than he did this year if the quarterback is there. And the quarterback is important. We'll find out what happens.
Is there a world Justin Jefferson gets traded? Most people say no, but he's going to get a lot of money. Are they going to pay him if it's?
I have seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Okay, yes, there is some universe out there somewhere.
Nobody thought Tyreek Hill was going to get moved.
Well, I mean, I'm saying it's highly unlikely, but yes, it is not probable. It is possible that he could get moved, and if he gets moved, then this is another huge thing.
He's diva enough to get himself out of there somehow. It's just a question of does he push it.
The Hawkinson injury, though, like I don't think they want to start like 1-5 again.
Right.
No.
So that maybe factors in a little bit if they're thinking, all right, we got to have a way to score points.
Hawkinson Teague is going to be interesting next year too, because there's a non-zero chance that if he doesn't come back to like November or December, and I understand there's people talking like, oh, he'll be ready for training camp and opening day, which I remain highly skeptical on.
No chance.
But if he does not come back till November, December, if the Vikings have like 4 wins at that point, I mean, maybe he doesn't come back at all. And that's going to be what's going to be so fascinating.
And even if he comes back, like, what's he going to be? Like, I mean, he's not going to get a full training camp in. He's not going to be, as efficient as he's been. And who knows, like you said, with that team, you just don't know what they're going to be.
Right. Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating to see where he goes in drafts coming up here in the next couple of weeks. One more email here for you, Teague. It's from Otis in Chicago. How concerned are you about Stephon Diggs' future in Buffalo? Congrats on the huge win. That is Otis in Chicago. Yeah, this Diggs thing is kind of interesting. If you look at what he has been doing the last few weeks, he's still getting targets. Like, he's still being involved in the offense, but he's not running the same routes that he was earlier in the season. Like, he's not running these explosive downfield routes. It's a lot of stuff in the first 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. His role has changed. He doesn't seem happy. I think his brother said something probably like a month or two ago after a Monday night game, and he said Stephon Diggs needs to get out of Buffalo as soon as he can. Like, what do you think about his future in Buffalo? Because obviously, if he leaves, this is going to be very interesting for Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and the like.
Yeah, I think it might depend on how they play this week. I mean, if they lose and miss the playoffs, it probably makes it a little bit easier to move on from him. If they're the 2 seed, maybe he has a 3-game run, or 4-game run where everything seems great, and he goes for 10 and 120 every playoff game. But they seem to want a divorce at this point, and they kind of patch it together. I mean, it was even preseason, right? Like something was weird going on there the whole time, and it seems like maybe they're not willing to commit to it long term. I thought, like, contractually, I thought at the beginning of this year it was a little bit difficult for them to move on, but it may be more palatable next year in the 24 league year.
New offensive coordinator seems like he likes to run the ball a little bit more.
Yeah,
definitely doesn't seem like. I mean, Diggs is still getting the targets, but like you said, the down the field shots just aren't there right now.
Go ahead and I know, Terp, you can ask Teague about this. I know you kind of touched on it with the Matt Gay thing, but let's do an all-encompassing look at this.
So you won by 7 points during the season. Obviously, you had some good fab pickups. You talked about Trey McBride. Was there any other pickups that you really look back on and you're very thankful for throughout the season? And also, you talked about some of the moves that you almost made that almost cost you $1 million. Was there any that you didn't mention?
I think the best move I made heading into the sprint was Texans defense. I mean, the team, by the time the sprint rolled around, my team was pretty healthy. Didn't, with the exception of McBride, right? He was the kind of the one major addition. I did a few things during the year that win some spot starts, but Texans defense were the big one. I was going back and forth on a few different ones. I wanted someone to pair with Miami because I thought Miami, they had the Jets matchup. Obviously, they had some good stuff during the sprint, and saw Texans on there twice and felt like if it's Levis, great. It would, they nearly turned him over 5 or 6 times. The first time they played. Mm-hmm. If it's not Levis and it's Colt Tannehill, that's okay too. I'll take my chances there too. So yeah, Texans defense was a big one.
And then the lineup submission, really the only one that you were ever nervous about in the championship round was the Matt Gay one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't happy that I wasn't going to play Mostert. Like, that didn't feel great, but I felt like it was the right move. I thought, the McCaffrey teams that were above me, I feel like I needed something, right? And either it was going to be what happened, which is he plays a little bit, tweaks the calf, and they decide to shut it down, or Kittle has a Kittle game. right? And he scores, and he scores 3 times, and it turned out, that wasn't the case either. But I feel like I had to play Kittle with what was above me, and I needed Ferguson because I thought I was strong enough, even with the Dallas Detroit, like 54-point total, to survive it as long as I had a piece. And Mostert was just the odd man out. Yeah, and like I said before, I thought for a brief moment about Higgins instead of Reed, and fortunately had the discipline not to. That would have felt better. It would have felt better to be like, okay, great, I don't have 2 guys late. I've got 1. But fortunately was calm enough and clear-headed enough not to do that.
Getting back, I forgot to ask you this too. The night of after the Packers Viking games ends, and it's official as official can be in that moment. How late did you stay up that night? Did you have problems falling asleep? Yeah. Were you on the phone with a lot of people that night?
Yeah, my DMs were pretty great. Text messages were great. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep and I had to catch a flight in the morning.
Okay.
So I'm, at the airport on, an hour and a half maybe of sleep. And then I'm on, I went to work on Tuesday, and I'm sitting there, at 6:30 Pacific because I'm on Central Time, having adjusted for a week and looking around, be like, I'm not sure why I'm here. Like, why did I do this? Like, why am I not sleeping? Right. Cause I just wasn't thinking, I was just totally clearly. And
it still hasn't sunk in for you yet. Yeah.
I don't think it will for a while.
Right.
I've been, and there's so many good players, that play this and you're just kind of hoping for a chance. And I'm not the best player in the world, but I feel like I'm live in these things when I play.
That's all you could ask for.
Right.
Yeah. And I've been, after it for a while. And I feel like I've gotten better too. Right. And that's what's been really gratifying is feel like I'm improving. But it hasn't sunk in just because I've been chasing it, for a little while. So it may take a while before it feels really real. This helps though, guys. This helps make it more concrete.
It's cathartic. Well, not cathartic is not the right word, but just talking with other people who know what this means, and how big a moment this is. Yeah, obviously it's very cool for you to share with us everything, all the emotions and everything you went through. And certainly I think what may make it even more concrete is when you're trying to go back to back in 2024. Which you say, oh, that's crazy, but we got Nick Costantino in the chat. Right? He's in the chat. He went back to back with the team, with the Go Bills, the Marv Levy franchise with Tom Brani and Sean Stutzman. Yeah. They went back to back, and there's a very real possibility you said you're probably going to come out to Las Vegas and draft live out there. I have to ask you, have you started thinking about 2024 at all? Have you started thinking about drafts based on what you saw at the tail end of this season? Teague, is there anybody that you're excited about the prospects of drafting in 2024? And conversely, is there a guy that you're going to be totally out on next season?
So I think Saquon is not going to make a roster of mine next year. I think he's probably not back in New York. There'll be enough hype that I can see him being a 1-2 turn or mid-second round, depending on where he lands. That's not for me next year. And I have to say McBride on the guy I'm interested in. I'd feel bad not saying, because he was McBride. He was so good for me. Right. Yeah. I think I'm gonna. This is 8 months before this happens, maybe, or 6 months before I start drafting me. But I'm gonna live probably in that middle tier tight end area. I think it's so much deeper than it's been in recent years. And you got Bowers coming in. You've got maybe another rookie or two. I think you've got a case for 12 or 14 of them, where if you took tight end 14 in like the 8th or 9th, you'd feel okay about it. I think this year, where I'm not sure that's been the case. Like, I haven't felt that way in the past, in the past few years at least. But I think with the way defenses are playing, like more too high, you're seeing longer drives. Tight ends are a part of that. I'm going to be really interested in the Fergusons again, maybe McBride at the top, in both of the Packers tight ends. Right. I think that could be fine, but Mayer, right? Like pick Andrews coming back, pick any of them. I'm gonna be real interested in that range.
Another guy that could be in that range, maybe a little bit lower. What about Kyle Pitts next year, T?
Yeah, Dave's shaking his head. I'm going to get tricked again. I'm ready to be hurt again.
That idiot's still coaching.
No, sure. That's totally fair. Yeah.
If he's not coaching, I'll get back in on you.
Yeah. If he's not coaching, if you could have an exposure above 100%, like that's what I'm going to have on Kyle.
I'm with you 100%. If he is not the coach and you get some sort of guy in there with like a brain cell, I'm in on Kyle Pitts. If Arthur Smith is back, I'll fade every single one of those guys again. I can't watch that Drek. With those three talented guys, that offense isn't one of the best in football with that idiot as a coach.
Even if they get like Fields, right? Even if they have
I don't care. Don't matter. If Arthur Smith's still a coach, everybody's going to be this.
That's the thing. And that's what I learned this year about it. Like I thought, okay, there's no way that all three of these guys can be bad this year with Pitts, London, and Robinson. And I don't think they were bad, but all three of them,
but none of them paid off where they were getting drafted.
Exactly. Yeah.
What if they send Smith to like some sort of rehab where they teach him how to use his best offensive
prison for the rest of his life? Fantasy football prison.
Terp,
I'm in.
You're getting a little crazy here. With
I'm not.
But the thing with
I didn't draft many of those guys, so I'm okay there. But fantasy football prison for a couple of years, bring him back as like a running backs coach or something.
Right. And the thing is, like, I don't think Arthur Smith is like stupid. I think sometimes you know what he might be, Terp. He might just be too smart for his own good.
No, he's stupid. You see the guys he was putting out there over Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan. You drafted Bijan Robinson the first 5 picks, was it?
Right.
And you're out there. Tyler Algier, nice player. No disrespect to him. But he shouldn't be getting carries over Bijan Robinson, especially when you're pretty much out of it. This week, they're in a playoff hunt. If Tampa Bay loses, which they're probably not going to, I'm sure they'll be giving the ball to Cordarrelle Patterson. It just doesn't make any sense. No.
I think sometimes these coaches think that they know the game much more, not more than they actually do, but more than they need to. Like, the defense could be, well, we think Jonnu Smith is a much better fit for this play call than Kyle Pitts.
With those three, it's just so simple. They're just that talented. Exactly. It's just, you've seen the flashes this year. You've seen Drake London games. You've seen Bijan Robinson games. Kyle Pitts, you see a little bit of flashes because they just hate the guy. But it just doesn't make any sense.
It's the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And I think if Arthur Smith adopts that in 2024, the Falcons could be really, really fun to own for fantasy. If he doesn't,
if he doesn't and somebody else is in there, I mean, these guys are going to skyrocket.
That's the thing. Like if he's still around next year, I'm going to be out on the Falcons. I'll just let somebody
totally out. Don't care who the player is.
But if there's a bounce back this year and the light turns on and maybe he realizes he needs to, if he wants to keep his job another year, he's got to make sure he's got to get, Pitts and London and Robinson involved early and often. Then maybe we see a bounce back in 2024 and then we can revisit in 2025. But right now, I think I'm with Terp on this, Teague. I'm out on Falcons going forward.
Final question. You're a millionaire now. What do you plan on spending your money on?
I'm not a big stuff guy, so I don't have like a dream to own a Ferrari or a well-appointed boat or whatever. That's not really, it's not my thing. I think I'm going to try to use it in the first place to just make the things that, my wife and my daughter and I already do just a little bit better. Like, our trips are going to be, we like to travel a little bit more elevated. I'm 6'3". I've taken my last economy class flight for a while. Just that kind of thing where like more, I want to do more of the stuff that I'm already doing, just, a little bit nicer maybe.
Nice. So upgrading on flights, improving like the little thing. Do you have anything concrete in mind that like, okay, well, I'm going, like, you'll probably invest, right? Yeah. Invest a good portion of it. So is there anything like, do you have like a fun purchase that you could be something small, could be something a little bit larger than small? Is there anything like that that's on your mind right now that you're going to go out and get?
I wish I had a really good answer. Like, I've been getting a lot of good suggestions. People are like, you should be a shark guy and like get a shark tank, and then you can fill it with. And I've had some really good suggestions from people, but I honestly I haven't sat down with my wife really because she's been back in Minnesota this week, and that'll be a team decision about anything that we do that's more than just kind of like the normal day-to-day stuff in our life. But I think probably something sentimental, that I can look at and just remember.
Jalen Reed jersey, just make the purchase.
All the Jalen
hanging on the wall.
All the Jaden Reed jerseys. Maybe I'll get like 50 of them, give them to a school or something, and just outfit them entirely in Jaden Reed jerseys. I think that's a good suggestion too.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's one of the more original ones we've heard, which would be awesome to do. Teague, this has been so much fun. I feel like I won $1 million just talking to you tonight, getting you into your mind and getting, just feeling the emotions that you are feeling, winning something that you worked so hard and have been chasing for so long to do. So congratulations to you on that. I wish you nothing but the best going forward in all your 2024 drafts. We will continue to follow you on the X at Teague Orgeman. It's right there on the screen if anybody wants to follow Teague, the 2023 FFPC main event winner. And yeah, definitely looking forward to meeting you in Las Vegas coming up here in September of 2024, man. Thanks so much for doing the show tonight. Be good and enjoy 2024.
Congrats,
man.
So much,
guys. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thank you for everything that you do. And you run an amazing contest, and the content's fantastic. And yeah, just thanks to you guys too.
Thank you, Teague. We appreciate the kind words, dude. Go enjoy your night, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Teague Orgeman, the FFPC main event champion, the $1 million winner here, joining us.
It's crazy listening to that story, like starting off 1-3 with that top 3 draft picks, and then when, like you said, winning 10 in a row, like even with those top 3 draft picks, it's crazy. I mean, that just shows you're never really out of it. I mean, you need some things to fall straight and fall right, but good draft picks in the middle, like the Kyron Williams, the Jake Fergusons of the world, can Mosterts can outweigh the Higgins and Justin Jefferson debacle up top. It's crazy. I mean, how many guys can say they drafted Justin Jefferson this year and won $1 million?
I remember listening to, I think it was the GOAT District. I think it was Dan Williamson and JD talking about the return of Justin Jefferson, from this hamstring injury. And Dan kind of jokingly said, he's like, yeah, I don't know how many people drag Justin Jefferson into the championship round this year.
Perfect guy to be live. Like you say, like the guys you want to be live with going in the main event,
right?
Sprint, obviously you have all the chalk guys, but you have a guy like Justin Jefferson, and he's the guy that eventually wins you $1 million, even as painful as it was in the first half. I mean, that's incredible. It's just an incredible story.
And the thing is too, like, I remember Dan saying that, and he was kind of, he understood that there was probably some Jefferson teams, but I remember thinking, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I bet there are a few teams. And you think about the tight ends that Teague had with Kittle and McBride and Ferguson, and just basically trying to, patch holes in the leaky dam of his wide receiver core, and he got it done. I mean, if you started off, what was it, 0-3 or 1-3?
1-3.
So. You start off 1-3, and you have an 88-point week. You're like, what am I even doing?
What am I doing?
And somehow that team ends up being the $1 million winner. I mean, just
it's crazy because everybody always are so worried about the top 4 or 5 picks, but he didn't win it in the top 4 or 5 picks. I mean, Jalen Hurts obviously was very good, but the Mosterts, the Kyron Williams, the Jake Fergusons, they're the guys that kept him afloat until, Breece Hall and Jaden Reed and Trey McBride and, Kittle had a couple games down the stretch. I mean, Houston defense. I mean, you got to piece together every position. I mean, everybody thinks it's just like, all right, well, Justin Jefferson's out for the year. I'm done.
Right.
This guy just proved that that's not the truth.
Yeah, exactly. We have seen I always bring this up all the time too. Everybody says, oh, you need an elite tight end if you want to win the FFPC main event. And I always go back to Don Metter, whatever year that was, 2012 or 2013, where his starting tight end was Dante Rosario for the championship round. He did not need. And there are so many different ways to win this, especially when it gets crazy.
A non-Christian McCaffrey team wins. I mean, it's with all the Christian McCaffrey, who was just a monster this year. I mean, to fade him and like you said, like not to potentially not use Mostert if he didn't get rolled out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. If you really nobody would do that, and to do that just shows how an impressive win and impressive just overall year he had.
Teague Orgeman, your 2023 FFPC main event champion, the $1 million winner. Terp, I just realized, I just saw what time it was, and I want to, we won't get the chance to get to all the emails tonight. There's one email that I wanted to get to, and my system just crashed that I'm using. So I'm going to go back to the YouTube chat because John Terry was actually asking about this guy earlier in the broadcast, and I feel like this is one that we should answer, and we'll just go out on top. with that. If I can find it here. Yeah, here it is. John Terry, where do you guys stand on Kyren Williams in 2024? And Terp, I think this is interesting because Kyren Williams is even a top 20 running back this season.
Nobody even close.
And I drafted him in a lot of leagues super late just because I read a blurb that he was catching passes, a lot of passes in preseason from a Rams beat writer. I'm like, okay, I'm on board with that. Had no idea it was going to turn into this. He's not a super athletic, super fast, super strong guy. He was not good at the combine. There's so many red flags with this guy, and yet he ended up being the guy as far as running backs go this season. Now, the Rams have an opportunity to maybe sink some draft capital into a running back of the future or a guy who can compete with Kyren Williams. But with all the problems they have on defense and all the holes there and trying to replace guys that are either already gone or are going to be gone, I wonder if that's more of a priority for them. And we draft Kyren Williams as a guy who's going to be a top 5 or top 10 running back next season. How are you as of right now, how are you planning on handling Kyren Williams in your drafts?
As of right now, I'm in on him. It's just like you said, these early drafts, you don't know. I could see him going as a 1-2 turn guy. Mm-hmm. As a 1-2 turn guy with these receivers and the position being what it is, especially the running backs are just unknown. I'm probably out there, but if he's slipping in the mid-second round, 2-3 turn possibly, I'm in. I don't see him getting in the top 10. I mean, that's just, to me, I saw a comparison on X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter, right? But I saw it this week of James Robinson after he had his big year, that it could be just like a fall off the cliff type of situation. I don't see that because Sean McVay has proven this year that if Kyren Williams is healthy, Kyren Williams is getting the ball. There's no other option. So McVay's back, Stafford's back, Kupp, Puka, who they call lightning in the bottle. I don't see them investing high capital in the running back position. It could be a veteran type of situation, but we looked at this year. How many veterans, the Dalvin Cooks of the world, the guys that got at it on the streets, well, they didn't really do much. I mean, none of them really set the world on fire. So, we look at that, and I'm in on them, cautiously in, but definitely still in.
I mean, the big thing is if we get by day 2 of the NFL draft and the Rams still don't have a threat on their roster, Kyren Williams, to me, at that point is a slam dunk.
You also look like they drafted a kid this year in Evans who a lot of people thought was going to be Cam Akers' backup. Who, when Cam Akers, got flamed out early, they thought, Evans was going to be the guy that was going to take over. That didn't work out. He never really saw the field all season. So it's definitely something to monitor. Year 2 in the system, does he improve a little bit to get more touches, with Kyren Williams? But right now, you have to buy it because, like we talked about, the running back position, the uncertainty surrounding it. You're going to see every human being in the fantasy football world next year after it's been proven go to 0 RB. I mean, you saw the Rashad Whites this year, guys like that just came out, David Montgomery, that just came out and just led fantasy teams to tons of money. You're going to see him do it all over again because most of the guys that we drafted up top, like Eckler, Pollard, Derrick Henry, to name a few, were total flameouts.
Yeah. And I think that these things are fickle, right? It's a copycat thing. There's going to be a lot of people that will stick to their druthers and stick to their guns, and
it'll be interesting to see where the quarterback position falls next
year. That's another one that I'll be watching too. I think quarterbacks and tight ends are going to be fascinating, and I think
Teague said, the tight end position is going to be, I think it's more deep. Spread out. It's more spread out to where you're going to see 10, 12, 13 guys get drafted. Obviously they're going to be the top heavy guys, but the quarterback position, I mean, you saw this year, if you drafted Patrick Mahomes, you're drawing dead. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, you were live, but you had to be really good below him. And then you saw the guys like C.J. Stroud, and, Anthony Richardson before he got hurt, guys like that were late round draft picks, and Tua, and we can keep going on the list of guys who, Brock Purdy, that set the world on fire, and the position I think is going to take a big drop. I think you're going to see quarterbacks getting drafted to where they should be and should have been the last couple of years. I don't think you're going to see many top 3, maybe Josh Allen. But outside of top, definitely not going to see any top 2 picks in quarterback position.
A guy
on the 4th round.
A guy who was always a top 2 pick in my book as far as FFPC draft analysis is Dave Terpoilli, and you are always live when you are following him on the X at Dave Terp. Dave, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight in Farrell's stead. Great job. I'll look forward to doing this again with you soon. Have a great evening. And listen, man, I'm starting looking at flights out to Philly. If the Packers end up going to,
you know the positive things I've said about Jordan Love this year.
Yes.
I won't be saying any positive things if you're sitting next to me.
It's true.
I'll protect you from the lunatics, but that's all I can do.
Listen, protecting me from the lunatics is all I'd ask for. Like that.
We'll have a lot of beer. Don't worry.
Above and beyond, I'm down for that for sure. I'll look forward to it, Dave. Be good. Enjoy the games this weekend, dude.
See you, bud.
That's Dave Terpoilli, ladies and gentlemen, at Dave Terp on the X. My co-host with the most tonight, filling in for Farrell Elliott. I want to thank Teague Orgeman. I want to thank Dave Terpoilli, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for watching, listening, streaming, downloading. The HSFF Hour will be back next Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern time. We had so much fun with $1 million winner. Let's do another one. So FantasyPros Championship $1 million winner, Brendan Gobert, will be our guest next Friday at 10 o'clock when Farrell returns. That's going to be a lot of fun. In case you missed Tuesday's RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, you can listen to it, rotoviz.com/podcast. You can watch it back on the FFPC socials. We had the 17th place finisher in the FFPC main event, Mr. Mike Zuka, on that program. He's known as Mongooses. That's his team name everywhere. A lot of people were looking forward to that. We had a lot of people show up for that. You don't hear a whole lot from Mike Zuka on podcasts, so it was cool to have him on and pick his brain a little bit. Show will be back at 10 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday with our annual our annual world famous FFPC playoff challenge preview. And to do that, we're going to have on Judd Rosengart and Phil Orban, two of the four guys that took down the $500,000 last year in the world famous playoff challenge. We'll know what the teams are then. We might even put together a lineup live on air. You never know what's going to happen there. So make sure you're tuning in for that. That's 10 o'clock on the FFPC socials on Tuesday night. In case you missed last night's high stakes fantasy football show on the Better Sports Network, you can rewatch it there or any of the FFPC socials. Myself and Fantasy Pros Derek Brown chopped it up for 2 hours. Took a look back on 2023, and we got into a lot of 2024 draft stuff as well. So check that out in case you missed it. And then this coming Thursday, you can watch it again live, 7 to 9 p.m. with yours truly and Draft Sharks Alex Korf with a look ahead to 2024 and the FFPC Playoff Challenge. I can almost guarantee you we will be building a Playoff Challenge lineup in one of the segments of the show on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. I think that's it. So go to myffpc.com, play in the weekly challenge, play in the FFPC playoff challenges, whether you want to get at the $200 level where you can win $500,000 or the $35 level where you can win $100,000. It's all there at myffpc.com. Remember, this is the last week of the weekly challenge as well. So sign up for that. You can win up to $2,500 this weekend. And by the way, week 18 weekly challenge, that's going to be a lot of fun with all the craziness going on right now. If you want to play and have some fun this weekend, this would be a perfect way to supplement your football watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment on this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, get notified by clicking the notification bell so you will get notified every time we go live and you can hop on and watch the broadcast. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Happy New Year to everybody as well. Get in on those playoff challenges and the weekly challenge. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One other thing I forgot to mention, and nobody's going to believe me now because he's not on anymore, but Teague Orgeman, a huge fan and a viewer/listener of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour as well. So what that means is we have a guy who just won $1 million attributing part of that championship to being a fan of this show. So if you watch tonight, listen tonight, who knows, maybe you'll be the $1 million winner in 2024. There's a non-zero chance of anything. So make sure that you are doing everything you can to win that $1 million this coming year. We have a lot of stuff going on at the FFPC. More stuff will be rolled out shortly. For now, play those playoff challenges and weekly challenges. And I will talk to you Tuesday night on the RotoViz High Stakes Load.